Welcome to the channel, everyone. Well, today's the day. The run stand is gonna fire up this 350 engine that was in Dad's Camaro. So we're gonna test the engine, we're gonna test the run stand. This is actually run stand build number 2 for me. I sold the first run stand, but I've got this thing all wired up, ready to go. See all my gauges and all the wires. I know it gets kind of messy, but when you have all those wires, there's really nothing you can do about that. When you got all these gauges, especially this O2 sensor. It's right now I don't have it hooked up. I'm not going to run that right now. I just want to fire this up, make sure everything's going to work here, and then I'll get that running. But got a 2-gallon gas tank for this thing. This will stay with the run stand. I'll make a tray or something so it stays with it. I'll have 2 gallons. It has a 1-gallon fuel cell there, so I'll put half of it in there and then have another gallon if I need it. I don't think I'll need more than a gallon to run the engine at one time, but I'll have 2. Got some 3/8 fuel line. I got to connect the fuel cell to the fuel pump there. Like I said, this engine was out of Dad's Camaro. Supposedly was the original engine. No way to prove that 100%. I stole the pulleys and stuff off the engine that come out of the 70 Chevy truck. That's the 600 CFM carb that was on the pickup. No, it's not going to do all-out performance, but it'll run on the run stand here. Got some wires. I got these Moroso wires. Not real happy with them. I mean, they're nice. They're like race wires. I didn't need race wires. I was kind of wondering why they were so expensive when I bought them, but I accidentally bought those. I wanted one similar to the big block, but I accidentally bought some race ones. Those headers are black coated. I forget who they are. If I can find who they are, I'll link them. They actually got the bigger tubes, which I don't really need. Again, they're kind of overkill for this motor. I think this motor's got around 400 horse, I think. So the 600 CFM carb is probably not enough for it. Got me a little battery. I got to tighten up my drain, my radiator drain here. Got some brass fittings. Got to put some Teflon tape, tighten them up. Forgot my nipple. I'll have to get a nipple so I can drain it. That worked out really well last time, so I'm doing the same thing. Stole these radiator hoses from, they were going to go on my 70 Chevy truck. They didn't work out. They worked out perfectly here after a little bit of trimming, so I got to get some coolant in this thing, get some fuel in it, and then we'll test crank it. Just see if she'll crank around, get some oil pressure. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so we got coolant, we got fuel, everything I believe is ready to go. My radiator hose over here is leaking for some reason. I had no idea. It's like I can't get this clamp tight enough. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the paint or whatever. I snugged it down. Hopefully the heat, once I get this thing running, the heat's gonna seal it back up. I have no idea why that won't stop leaking, but it's got a little bit of a leak on that clamp. Everywhere else looks good. I don't see any fuel leaking out of the tank or lines or anything right now. So I gotta hook up my electrical. My positive, my negative's hooked up, but I gotta hook up my positive, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just crank this thing over, make sure the starter's happy, make sure you know, everything electrical is working. Okay, so to show you how I got this wired up is this is the main switch, and that turns everything on. The lights are on in all the gauges. And it basically turns on the power to all these switches too. This is the coil, so when I turn that on, it's going to actually fire up. But if I crank it with it off, I can just crank the motor over and it won't fire up. Then we've got the fans. That switch fires up the fan on the radiator. I've got this, I'm not going to turn it on, but if I turn it on, it turns on the O2 sensor. I ain't got that set up yet. And then I've got an extra one here, I guess in case maybe if I had like electric fuel pump or something, I could hook that up. But I do have one extra switch on here. But I'm not sure why that tack is got the shift light on, and it is on over 6,000 RPM. But like I said, we're gonna crank this over. I'm just gonna crank it over without the ignition on. We're gonna check for leaks, make sure it's got good cranking vacuum, and like I said, we'll get her outside, we'll try to fire it up. I don't want to keep hammering on that starter. Just short burst, let it cool off. Only got about 20 pounds of oil pressure, but it does have oil pressure. I smell fuel too, so the fuel pump is ready to go. Actually, I feel like I'm smelling too much fuel. I don't see anything leaking though. I think we'll get her outside, see if she'll fire up. that noise? Got some sort of a squeak coming from something. Sounds like the carburetor. But it's running good. It's running real good. Well, so there it is, guys. Everything is working up pretty good. I got a coolant leak. Now I got one coming from this hose. These hoses, it seem like they're junk. I might have to go back to those. I got those universal ones. I thought these would work. They were for my 70 Chevy truck. And I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know, maybe the clamps. The clamps are older, but they look good. They're made in the USA clamps. They should be all right, but had a little bit of antifreeze dripping out of that hose. Oh, and I have a noise. It sounds like a little sucking noise or something. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Sounds like it's coming from the carburetor. I didn't hook up the electric choke. That doesn't have a, I think I should have a positive going to that electric choke. Maybe that's the deal. It doesn't like that. I don't really know. Actually, I've never messed with one of those cars with an electric choke. I've always got the manual chokes. I've not had much trouble in the cold. Even here in Wisconsin. The few times that I fire these up in the cold, I don't seem to have much trouble, but whatever. Running good. I set it at 12 degrees before, around in there. That might be too much for this motor. But yeah, this is kind of a test fire, making sure everything's working good. I got the motor up to temperature. The thermostat kicked on, so now I'm going to let it cool down, and we'll check the antifreeze level, make sure that's good. Yeah, everything's working good. My gauges are all working good. The tach, I'm not sure why it keeps stopping at different different RPMs when you shut it off, but it works fine when it's running. Had a bunch of vacuum, 15 inches or whatever you want to call that, of vacuum at idle. So I mean, this thing had all kinds of vacuum, which is good. I mean, volts are good. It's a brand new alternator. Temperature working good. Like I said, I run it up there. I saw the thermostat kick on. Temperature went down, and oil pressure was around 50 pounds. I didn't run it that much, but it seemed like in Dad's car, once we got it running, and it was about 20 pounds at idle. Cold oil pressure doesn't mean a whole lot. It's cold oil pressure is going to be high, so you really want to run it and get it warmed up before you look at your oil pressure. But I've got all the gauges here to tell me exactly, what's going on. So, and they're all working. So I'm real happy. All my switch panels working. Probably going to open this up, check the oil pressure gauge fitting, make sure it's not leaking. This doesn't appear to be leaking. This kind of went on a little funny. I was going to put a new line for the oil pressure gauge, but I reused the one that was in Dad's Camaro just because it was long enough. But almost looks like I'm getting a little oil. There's a little oil there from the distributor gasket, which is odd. But other than that, everything looks good. I'll run around it, looking it all over. But it was in Dad's car running, so it ran good, except for once it warmed up, it was burning oil. We thought there was something wrong with it, but come to find out that the PCV was sucking. It was sucking oil from the PCV valve. We know that because Dad's brand new engine did the same thing with the valve covers. His valve covers, there's no baffles in the valve cover, so the oil is getting shot right into the PCV. There's no PCV on this engine, that's why it stopped doing it. You probably should have a PCV valve, but with those valve covers, it's not going to work. And it's actually the same thing with these valve covers. There's no baffle, so there's no way to really run a PCV without sucking oil into your motor. Then you think you got something wrong. But anyway, guys, it's working out good, and I'm happy with everything here. So I'll see you.